Our guest author this morning, Brightwell Dube, is an inspired writer, motivational speaker, poet, LGBTQI plus activist. Brightwell's debut book, titled Untangled, The Psychological Chains of Human Abuse, tackles gender-based violence in its many forms. The book also serves as a guide for those that seek to broaden their knowledge in understanding the depth of the scourge of human abuse. Well, to unpack this informative read, Brightwell joins us now in studio. Good morning. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you so much.
What inspired you to write this book? Tell us a little bit about the book.
Awesome. Firstly, I'd like to greet South Africa. I love you. Untangled, the psychological chains of human abuse. Wow, it's perhaps my whole life experience. My whole life experience with abuse, with opening up about my sexuality. I'm a proud trans woman, so my pronouns are she, her. But most importantly, the one thing that pushed me was that gender-based violence was termed a pandemic. So we received the vaccine for COVID-19, but we didn't receive the vaccine for gender-based violence, which is a pandemic on its own. And I said, let me put it down on paper and come up with a vaccine for gender-based violence. And thus, South Africa, this is your vaccine for gender-based violence. You need to get your hands on this book. It's a beautiful book in the midst of the struggles we're going through as a nation.
Yeah. What is the significance of the title Untangled?
Untangled, the psychological chains of human abuse. Untangled. Wow. Philosophically, I was bound. You know, bound could mean you are in chains. You perhaps are not confident. Perhaps you have a low self-esteem. But untangled means it's time that you own up to who you really are. It's time that you own up to your power. It's time that you move with your power.
Yeah. Now, the book, tackles head-on, describes the concept of abuse in its many forms.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Awesome. I write in the book and I say the genuine affirmation that we are loved beings at an early age produces courage that consequently equips the human psyche to be empowered, secure, and bold enough to walk away from any abusive situations. And that simply means if we raise our children in love, they also are going to have the capacity to love their own children. So gender-based violence is this huge umbrella term, but the root cause is how we raise our children. Let's love our children. Let's normalize telling our children that I love you, because that's one thing that we have a struggle with, just telling them we love them.
Now, unpack the various ways of sowing human violence as you detail in the book.
Wow. The first thing that I had to do, I had to look at a different approach to gender-based violence, because mostly as writers, we put connotations to abuse. We say, if it's not men, it's women abuse. If it's not women abuse, it's child abuse. And that's the big mistake that we make. We need to write about human abuse so that psychologically people can understand that abuse is something that happens to everybody in spite of your sexuality, in spite of who you are. So we need to come up with a different approach. And I write about physical abuse, I write about emotional abuse, I write about spiritual abuse, which are all the forms of abuse that we experience. And emotional abuse, well, it's so painful because it's so hard for someone to even notice that you are being emotionally abused. And sometimes it's even difficult to explain it to somebody else. So I said, let me write a book that's going to unpack emotional abuse, but let it be, because abuse comes in a lot of fragments, It could be identity, it could be how you grew up, it could be self-esteem, it could just be compliments coming from somebody that could build up a whole different person that we know altogether.
Now, you speak about the syndromes of entitlement and dependency. Talk to us about that in the book.
Interesting. Syndromes of entitlement and dependency. Wow. Gender-based violence, I say that when you depend on someone, and you're dependent on someone, it becomes easy for that person to abuse you, because then you ask yourself as a victim, if I walk out of this abusive relationship, will I have money? Will I have food? Will I have a house? So we cling on to abusive relationships sometimes, not necessarily because of the genuine love that comes from it, but we cling on to abusive relationships because of, I am getting something from it. So let me cling on to it. And it's huge. It's on a wider scale. I even got to the spiritual part of it, and I say, well, if there is cheese on a mousetrap, right, people will go for that cheese, and lots of them will be trapped. I mean, we have people brainwashing people, you know, and people still listen to them, and they spread influence. And we don't understand that when we brainwash people, what we are doing is that we are actually putting them in this psyche where they're just going to be following what we're saying, even if it's not the right thing to do.
Now, there's a chapter in the book where you touch on the courage to leave and a beacon of hope for the human abuser. Tell us a little bit about that.
Awesome. The good thing, I love what you're actually asking, because the good thing about this book is that it has a very balanced view to gender-based violence. Oftentimes we look at it from victim's perspective, but I brought a balance of the perpetrator as well. So we need to understand that the perpetrator is a human being that has also gone through abuse just like everybody else. The perpetrator has at some point been abused, and they are on a healing journey. So why are we not helping the perpetrator overcome? Let's not suppress the perpetrator, because the perpetrator will give birth to another child that's going to still imitate the same behavior, because children may not be good listeners, but they're good imitators of behavior. So the perpetrator must be helped, must be healed, for us to be assured that we're moving towards a gender-based violence-free generation.
And just finally, for somebody who's watching this interview right now and has been tormented by abuse, how does this book help them?
Awesome. This book, firstly, it affirms them that they are beautiful. It affirms them that they are powerful, which is something that we don't get on a daily basis. We are told negative compliments. We're told we're not beautiful. You're told, you know, wait. But this book affirms you of your beauty, which takes you on a self-realization journey as well. And it's beautiful because it not only does that, but it provides this. Let's say, for example, in chapter 66, I say, no child can tell better a story of being subjected to a lot of human abuse because of sexuality than a black African child. The extremes in which community, society, church will take this child in the hope that they wake up a different person are completely uncalled for. I know it all, from the drinking of bitter medicine to getting cleansed in almost all the rivers. Believe me when I say, only a strong mind will cause this child not to succumb to suicide, because the pain is just too much to take in. Colonization, apartheid, slavery, they were enough. Our lives matter. A black child's life matters.
All right, Brightwell,
just like
thank
all
you so
other
much.
Children. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Brightwell Dube. Thank you so much for talking to us. He's an author, and he's been speaking to us about their new book titled Untangled, The Psychological Chains of Human Abuse.